As it says here, my name is Pontus Rehn. I'm the CEO of Simsen Diagnostics since 1 year ago, pretty much to date. And I'll tell you what we do, to whom we do it, and why we do it. So basically, there are 4 million patients in Europe alone diagnosed with cancer. These figures are from 2020. That's approximately the Öresund region, the eastern Denmark plus the Scania region. So quite a few people. Half of those, twice the population of the greater Gothenburg area, die every year in Europe alone from cancer. So quite a substantial amount, which is why we do what we do. A lot of these people don't really have to die, and they do so because of late detection of relapses. In some cases, they do so because whatever treatment is administered, the physician is not really sure whether or not it has some efficacy or not until months possibly have passed. And if you have some surgical removal of the tumor, it's not always quite certain whether you were able to remove the entire tumor or if some remains. With our technology, through a simple blood sample, you're able to test whether or not the tumor burden has changed in the body. So basically what happens, we don't screen an otherwise healthy population if they have cancer or not. We come in when a cancer has been diagnosed. And when it's been diagnosed, there will be some neoadjuvant therapy, and with our technology we can determine whether or not that has any effect. There will be surgery. We will determine if there's any minimal residual cancer left in the body or if you need to remove more tissue or, for that matter, put in some chemo, more radiation, whatever it is. And then we monitor the patients for years and years. We do so at the Eastern Hospital of Sahlgrenska here in Gothenburg, where we monitor pediatric patients with sarcoma. And we can detect them any relapse up to a year before you can see it with standard of care like imaging. And then we follow the patients, look at whatever treatment is administered. Does it have effect? Does it need to go to second-line treatment? Do they need to be included in clinical trials? Anything like that. So again, with a simple blood test. What we do is, first of all, we get normally a small biopsy of that tumor. And based on that biopsy, we develop a personalized panel. So we look at the tumor and we see exactly what mutations is forming this tumor. Because as you may know, that every single tumor is unique. It has its own set of various genetical mutations. And we will find those, and we will look for them, and then we'll take blood samples. And using our panel, we can check whether or not there is ctDNA in the blood. ctDNA is circulating tumor DNA. Put it simply, all cells in the body die, and when they do so, they emit traces of DNA in the blood. And when a tumor cell dies, it's called circulating tumor DNA. They only exist for a couple of hours, and then they're dissolved in the body. So if we find ctDNA in the blood, there is a tumor present right here and now. There are ways to do this, different ways. You can do qPCR, you can do fixed panels. Fixed panels is, for example, when you say you have a breast cancer, and then you know that the most common mutations are a specific set, and you look for those most common mutations in the patient's tumor or in the patient blood sample. However, you may have a couple of those mutations, none of those mutations, or a whole set of those mutations, but you don't really know, so there'll be a number of false negatives. What we do is that we look again at each patient's own tumor, so we know exactly what mutations to look for, which is why we cover everything in your tumor, and therefore we have many more markers we can track, and sensitivity will be excellent compared to the other methods, as well as specificity. Today we're primarily targeting biopharmas. So looking at clinical trials, they obviously have a need to understand whether or not their drug candidate has any sort of effect or not, and we can provide a very immediate answer as to if it has effect and if so, to what extent. We also help them with patient stratification, meaning that if you have a number of patients, say a larger trial, you want to have 800 patients in the trial. If you check their ctDNA levels prior to actually entering into the trial, you'll see that there will be a majority with very low ctDNA levels. And they are very unlikely to develop a relapse during the period of the trial. So if you only include those with high ctDNA levels, you can minimize cost by up to 75% of the entire trial. But you'll have the same statistical data, or it'll be as certain as otherwise, just much cheaper because fewer patients will have to enter the trial. We're also looking at clinical use. So we have one clinic today, that's the Finnish private cancer hospital Dokrates, where they monitor their patients. And obviously they want to see relapses as soon as possible. They want to understand the treatment efficacy. But as importantly, they also want to understand when not to treat patients. Because today, a lot of patients receive chemo and they have very, very low ctDNA levels, which is then directly corresponding to the tumor activity in the body. So these patients, they get all the side effects that will be very costly to treat. If it's neuropathy or anything else. But as a matter of fact, they don't have to be treated. And the survival outcome is exactly the same according to recent studies. So that's also saving a whole lot of cost for clinics and society as a whole. And as a possible side business, we're also looking into forensics, because we're really, really good at finding those small pieces of DNA in the blood. And the National Forensic Center also has that interest to be able to more exactly determine whether a specific individual has been at the crime scene, when it's been polluted, it's been out in the open air, or it's been mixed with 5, 6, 7, 8 other people's DNA. And today they don't have that ability. They don't see it on the market to be to that sensitivity that they would like to have. So we developed a pilot panel, so to speak, a prototype for them that they're now testing in the US, and so far very good results. If it succeeds, I'm going to isolate that as a separate part of the business, not to deviate away from the main business, which still is within oncology. Our business models is basically mostly transactional. We get in a trial as a project. X number of patients means same amount of panels, the personalized panels, and the number of blood samples that will follow. And we just put a number on each one of these tests. When it comes to clinics, that can also be, like in Dokrates, it's also very transactional. They send us a blood sample, we analyze it, we send back the results, we charge for it. But it could also be like we're discussing with the largest private hospital in Malta, where they want to incorporate our technology into their own lab. Because in Europe, labs are reluctant to give everything to outside vendors. They want to do things in their own labs. So we said, okay, let us develop the personalized panels, and then you can do the ctDNA analysis, the blood analysis on site, because our technology allows for that. We're a sequencing-only technology. So if they can do sequencing, like in a research lab, university lab, they can do our technology. The only thing they need is our bioinformatics software to do the actual analysis, and we'll provide that as software as a service. And finally, for the kit market, like in forensics, it's basically down to manufacturing thousands of kits, putting a price tag on them, and feel free to buy. So again, very transactional. We have customers today. So we have revenues, a number of pharma companies, researchers, one clinic, and interestingly, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Theradex Oncology is a CRO, clinical research organization. So they actually drive the clinical trials for a number of pharma companies in Europe. I think they're number 2 in Europe, size-wise. And they signed a deal now with us. They spent almost 1 year in a process where we were to be qualified as a vendor to them. And that came through. We received a certificate about 2 weeks ago. So now we sort of have access to their clients. And they're going to do this as a pass-through cost. So whatever we would charge a client, a pharma company, we can charge them, and they'll just have the cost passed through, so we don't lose any margins on that deal. So why do they choose us? This technology is extremely flexible, versatile. I already mentioned that it's extremely easy, actually, to integrate it into clinical workflows. It allows for inclusion of various biomarkers outside of those that are found in the tumor. So clinicians sometimes want to track also resistance markers. We can add those to the same panel, no worries. Most of our competitors would always ask for a specific part of the biopsy to start with. Well, we can do that, but we can also have sequencing data if that biopsy has already been sequenced at a university lab or somewhere. We can get the data, no worries. We can actually work with large panels, everything. So it's, again, very, very flexible. Bespoke reports. Some customers want to have the report looking one way, some the other way. All right, we'll tailor it to their needs. No other company does that today. And it's not always positive, and I shouldn't get political, but today it's actually a very beneficial thing and a competitive edge to be a European company serving other European companies. We're dealing with sensitive data, and you don't want to send sensitive data outside of the EU today, because that EU-US data framework is, well, it's been questioned quite a lot lately whether the US can uphold their end of that agreement or not. We're raising currently 2 million euros. To date, I have 0.4 million euros, 4 million SEK, already in the account from one of the existing previous investors, Gobia, a family office. And you can see here that this is how we intend to grow. I have more details on that if you want to see. So basically going from about 1 million SEK to 8 million this year, and we can do that because we were supposed to land at 4 million last year. We didn't, because a lot of our clients had delays in their trials because of difficulties with patient recruitment, so some of those revenues were moved into 2025 instead. And we're having now access to at least one CRO, discussions with 2 others, and we've signed on just 2 weeks ago 2 more clients. So they'll start just after the summer. We're having discussions with 2 clients on a phase 3 trial. So numbers will certainly increase. So this is a very moderate estimate on the forecast. We'll show black numbers in 2026. Normally startups shouldn't do that, I'm told. We should just focus on growth. But I think, and some of the investors I've spoken with agree with me, that if we show black numbers in 2026, we've proven the case, and then we can decide whether we want to have yet another round, for example, sponsoring a clinical trial or something, and then we may go red again, but at least we've proven that, yes, we can do it. So right now, we're heading towards black numbers by end of 26. The investors we'll look for, we want them to be European. We don't want Chinese, Russian money, obviously, but also because of timing. We want them to have a relevant network. We want them to be sparring partners. So there should be the possibility of having an active discussion with at least the larger investors. And looking at return on investment, there are basically 3 paths you can follow. One is an IPO. That's certainly not within my control. That's an ownership decision. We could get a bid on the company from, I don't know, Roche Diagnostics or whomever. That's not in my control either. What I can control is to build a strong company with lots of shareholder value that will pay out dividends. And if I do that right, the other 2 paths will also be, well, the bid will be better and the market introduction through an IPO will also be more attractive. But the thing I'm focusing right now is to build a strong company that can stand on its own 2 legs and pay out dividends. Thank you. I held a similar presentation in Zurich last week. I had a 5-minute slot, so sorry if I was a bit faster.
No, it's no problem. If you have any question for Pontus, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I will start off. You're raising money to what kind of valuation?
50 million SEK, 5 million euros.
5 million euros. Yeah. Okay. And this money, it will take you through for how long until you are profitable, or?
Yes, absolutely. So the money is for geographic expansion outside of the Nordics. The first two areas we want to get into would be in the UK, pretty well-defined clusters of biopharma companies, such as London, Manchester, Oxford, and Cambridge. And the second area we're getting into would be the Greater Zurich and the Munich area, again because of they have a well-defined set of cluster with biopharma companies. Also in Switzerland, we're looking at four private clinic chains. So we're working with Business Sweden now to gain entry into those.
Okay.
So it's international expansion. That's the first part. The second part is really about resilience. I need to make the company resilient so that if one or two of the key people quits, get run over by a bus or whatever, the company shouldn't just die. So we need to back up on a few of the positions we have in the company.
When it comes to international expansion, how will you do that? Will you have people on the ground or work with agents or distributors? Or?
I'm not a believer in success being defined by the amount of people that you have in the company. So we're going to hire people when we need to, or to build resilience in the company, meaning that if we go to the UK, we can do that actually very much from here.
Yeah.
And we can use the same lab as we have here in Sweden at AstraZeneca Venture Hub. However, if we get a critical mass of customers, then we can put a key account manager in place, and certainly we can do that in the Swiss-German part of the market. Just have someone there managing the customer relations, because the customer experience will be key to everything we do. I mean, it doesn't matter what sort of technology comes out that tries to disrupt what we're doing, because technology will always come out with, it will be new, it will be slightly better, but the one thing that cannot be replaced is the customer experience. So that's certainly one thing we're focusing on. So to get back to your question, the number of people will grow as we see fit for building resilience, and as business grows, if we need more hands in the lab, and when we have a critical mass of customers, then we're going to put a key account manager in place, but we're not going to do it the other way around. First put a sales rep and then get the customers.
But if you increase your footprint, I guess the main income from that will be clinical trials. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yes. Currently, we're focusing again on the clinical trials.
Yeah.
We don't have a CE mark yet, and I'm not building the company based on the assumption that we'll have a CE mark. We're going to apply for a CE mark according to the IVDR, but the growth will primarily come from the research use only designation that we use in clinical trials and for some private clinics as well. Then the forensic could prove to be like a cash cow if it succeeds, and we'll know that this summer, because then NFC will have taken it back to Linköping and do their final test, and they'll place an order with us. If they do so, then we're outside of the medical regulatory framework, so we can sell basically that same panel to whatever police force or forensic lab that wants it.
And it will be highly recurring, right? If
Yes.
I understood you correct, yeah. If we go for the next year, what can we expect you to communicate to your stakeholders and shareholders?
That we're going to follow the plan.
Yeah.
We're going to come in on about 8 million
yeah.
SEK this year in pure revenues, so no soft funding or that sort of thing included. And it's going to grow 100%, something like that, in the next year. Plus, it's going to show some black numbers. So this is basically what it looks like. Most of it will come, as you see here also, of course, that this is clinical trials, this is the clinic hospital part, and this is the non-oncology / forensic part.
Okay. So it's quite conservative, it sounds like that, when it comes to forensic.
It is, because we haven't proven the case yet.
No.
But we have clients within biopharma, we have clinics. That much I know that we can deliver on that. As far as growth is concerned, then of course it also has to do with if we get 10 new pharma clients, then we need to expand the lab capacity. We don't actually need to expand the physical footprint of the lab, but we need to have a few more people in the lab working. But again, they will be hired when we know we're going to have those customers, because there are very, very long lead times. If we sign on a customer today, it's for a trial that will start in 6 months from now. Not unheard of, in 3 months' time, they're going to call us and say, sorry, we had delays. It's going to be yet another 3 months. So we have time enough to recruit people when we know the income will be there.
Interesting.
So it's extremely tight cost control.
Yeah. When it comes to challenges and difficulties to reach your targets, what's the main sort of risks to your forecast?
Not reaching enough customers. It's a numbers game. If we reach out to 100 customers, we'll get 10 meetings. 2 of those will result in something, actually. That's why it's so interesting to go to a few to reach many, like we do with the CROs. So getting more CROs in place. Frankly, I was asked by one major investor if I was ready to be at the disposal of the job market, so to speak, if I didn't meet this budget. And I obviously had to say yes, because I've been working this really bottoms up, understanding how much money do we get from having one single patient. And that's approximately 100,000 in a clinical trial. So how many patients are there in a phase 1 trial? 12 to 20. So I'm counting approximately 10 patients instead. So it gives me 1 million for a phase 1 trial. How many phase 1 trials then? And what would that mean in a phase 2 trial and a phase 3 trial, etc.? So it's all really bottoms up. So, and again, it's very conservative.
I have one question regarding, it's quite straightforward, your plan here, but the US, if we go back and listen to the entire day, I would say a lot of companies say we need to go to the US because it's the biggest market and so on. And you seem to have it in the future. What's your...
Not necessarily.
No? Okay.
No, I know I'm pretty much doing the opposite thing here, but in the US we have Natera, Personalis, 2 major competitors. They're really good at what they do. They have sort of the same sensitivity. They lack in flexibility. They have to have a tumor biopsy. They can't work with data as a starting point. They have no way of tailoring reports to specific needs. They can't add resistance markers and other clinical actionable markers in the same analysis, etc., etc. But it's still very, very big. They lose more money per earned money than what we do, but nevertheless. In Europe, it's pretty open space. I mean, not a lot of competition. The competitors that exist here are based in the US. We had Saga Diagnostics in Lund. They migrated to the US. So to work with them, first of all, I mean, why work with a US company given the logistics of everything if you can do it within Europe? Second, the question about GDPR and all of that. However much I dislike what's going on, it's proven to be a competitive edge to us, where at least one company stated now that they want to work with someone that avoids sending sensitive data outside of the Union or the GDPR zone.
Okay, interesting.
And sorry, I should also mention that, can I show this slide? If I look at all the clinical trials in Europe, and we know that about 7% of all patients get into a trial, and I look at the 5-year prevalence to see about monitoring, then I get to some extreme numbers where the serviceable market would be like 3.6 just for trial billion euros in Europe and 101 billion for clinical monitoring. That's obviously not going to be something we're going to get. But if I take out a lot of that, first I just look at all of this, it's not going to happen. This may happen because there will be countries where they can't afford this. There will be physicians saying, no, it's not for us, and pharma companies that, no, we use other biomarkers, etc. And then I take a third of all of that, and then I end up at 4 billion euros. So is there a market? Yes. How many % of that will we reach? I have no idea. It doesn't really matter, because for me it just says the market opportunity will not be what hinders growth. It's there.
Interesting. If we go back to the forensics business, if you're successful in Sweden, is that something that you can export?
Yeah, we're currently actually speaking with people both at Europol and Interpol, because again, it's outside of the medical regulatory framework, so we don't need to apply for certification. The only thing NFC in Sweden wants, they don't require it, but they want us to have it manufactured in a manufacturing facility with a specific ISO mark. So we found Thermo Fisher has such a plant in the UK, so they're going to manufacture the actual panels for us. We're not a factory. We're going to give them basically a specification, and they can make 10,000 of those.
Okay. So it will be not a bottleneck from your side then?
No.
No. Okay, thank you very much, Pontus. We need to move on.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.